Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. Parents, family, friends, mentors, everyone here tonight is directly responsible for the collective success of our class. Please look around for a moment and give yourselves a round of applause. The first thing I thought of when brainstorming ideas for tonight's speech can be summed up in one word, and that word is time. I would be remiss to mention how much time it took for us to be here. 4 years of medical school on top of 16 other years of education to round out a bare minimum of 20 years in school. Time, ladies and gentlemen, was the topic of actually a story I read several weeks ago. Some of you in this room may remember the news about a plane crash that occurred on a flight from Jakarta to Singapore in December of 1997. This was a story of a Boeing 737 that crashed and all 97 passengers aboard perished. One of those passengers on board was an author by the name of Bonnie Hicks, who at the time had just recently published an article in the Sunday paper on how the brevity of life cannot be overemphasized. Chillingly, she wrote days before she passed on that flight, and I quote, "I cannot take for granted that time is on my side, because it is not." Time. What do we do with it? How can we make the most of it for the rest of our lives? I question my own position to speak on such a topic, but nevertheless, my classmates, I suspect, had an inclination that I would try. So to the best of my ability, listen carefully for the 3 things I hope you will take with you to the next chapter in your lives. Number 1, constantly evaluate your priorities. As I've grown older and more mature, I've found happiness to be less related to a chase for something and more so a function of contentment. And that contentment itself is a byproduct of understanding your priorities. Too often, we find ourselves only learning what our priorities are after something life-altering happens. And those priorities you thought you knew are only now put into glaring focus. I challenge you all to ask yourselves what your priorities are. The next thing to know about priorities is that knowing them is not enough, because they will change with the ebb and flow of our lives. So it is essential to constantly evaluate them. Ask yourselves what you are willing to sacrifice on that long list of priorities in order to invest your energy and time into those things at the very top. Remembering all the while that we will never get everything we want in any single moment, but that it is possible to attain much with enough sacrifice. Socrates once said, "He who is not contented with what he has would not be contented with what he would like to have." This brings me to point 2. Actualize your gratitude. I will never forget walking into school cafeteria when I was a first-year freshman at UAB. I had no money at the time. I had learned the art of living on $4 a day, but it was not uncommon to come up short. As I looked at the options in front of me, jingling the change in my pocket I knew would not be enough for anything there, a server standing behind the glass named Mr. Ray looked at me, and he asked if I was hungry. I told him I didn't have enough. Without hesitation, he made me a plate and commanded me to walk out with it, and if anyone asked any questions, he told me to say Mr. Ray said it was okay. He did that for 2 years. Over those course of 2 years, I learned many things about Mr. Ray. I learned that he was a dedicated Christian, a father, a grandfather, and that he was working 2 jobs to make ends meet. During that time, he would reiterate many simple life lessons to me. Do unto others what you would have done to you. When you climb the ladder of success, it is your duty to drop it back down for another. Simple lessons like these. On the last days of school before Thanksgiving and Christmas break, I would always bring him a plate of food, home cooked of course, in a small attempt to show him my appreciation. Then one day he was no longer working at UAB. It would be another 3 years until I bumped into Mr. Ray by happenstance in the middle of the streets on Birmingham. It is then where I hugged him and thanked him for what he had done so that I could focus on my studies long enough to be accepted into medical school. The point is this: everyone has their own Mr. Ray. Someone who has alleviated at least one of the many stressors that life has presented us. William Arthur Ward once said that feeling gratitude without expressing it is like wrapping a gift but never giving it. So I challenge you all to take those feelings of gratitude, those esoteric thoughts we all have, and actualize them into existence. Third and final point: trust in yourself. I feel it as you do. That gut-wrenching feeling that people will be looking to us for answers to questions we don't even know how to ask. In weeks, we will be in a position where all of a sudden our responsibilities greatly outweigh and tower over our confidence. But it is in those moments of discomfort and insecurity that we have the opportunity to learn to be something more. Thomas Carlyle once said, "No pressure, no diamonds." And as I look at everyone here, I know that our potential cannot be overstated. So embrace the process. Do not be afraid to ask for help. And eventually, learn to trust in yourself. In closing, time, ladies and gentlemen, is finite. Constantly evaluate your priorities. Actualize your gratitude. Learn to trust in yourself. Congratulations to the class of 2018. We did it.